There's a massive problem with the new Astra Militarum lineup. The army looks stellar. The faces are beautiful, awesome looking weaponry, and just look at this awesome mechanical horse.
Säg något negativt.
Obviously, the new minis are truly amazing, but I can assure you there's still a massive flaw in the Astra lineup. And after today, you'll know all about it and how to fix it. To fully understand this problem, we need to head back to the recent Astra history. The year was 2021 and Games Workshop had just released the brand new Kill Team Octarius box, finally giving the Astra players their highly sought after Deathcore of Krieg plastic kit. And in 2023, Games Workshop revamped their entire Astra Militarum line. The hype was now bigger than ever because with these two releases, Games Workshop had not only updated the scale, but they also made some really cool updates to some really outdated minis. However, there are still a few minis that still look for an update, such as the pretty much entire Katashan range, the Shilling Vostroyans, but most of all, I personally would have liked to see some super specific minis way smaller in stature. I'm of course talking about the Ratlings, the abhuman race of halflings that have been a part of the Astra lore for quite some time, but never, in my opinion, really hit the mark. Their first appearance going back to some of the earliest editions of modern 40k. And these old minis, they are, well, yeah. You can see for yourself, they're not the prettiest bunch in the lot. But then luckily for 5th edition, there came a relaunch of the Ratling minis. And in all honesty, I have no idea what happened. For me, the halflings should be happy, food-loving, derpy, and just life-enjoying creatures. Whilst these 5th edition minis look quite more like to the opposite side, they kind of look like shit. They, in all honesty, look more like some small gorilla-esque creatures, where the only halfling-related feature is the big feet and the small stature. Then moving on, we got these two slightly less grumpy minis in the Blackstone Fortress box, but these two still in my opinion feel more dwarf-like than actual halflings. But to be less grumpy, where does one even begin a project like this? Are we for real gonna have to sculpt these minis from scratch, from the beginning, everything ourselves? Thank God we're not gonna have to do that, because there's been a beautiful conversion made in 2022 by Ben Comets showing the 2019 Greenfield Grasshoppers depicted as proper Ratlings atop a small but big tank, and that really sparked an idea in my puny brain. In my puny... Emil, did you... Because the Greenfield Grasshoppers truly have everything we want. The charm, the visible love for food, and just the overall derp factor. So let's see if we can make these cute little bad boys into some cool, mean Imperial Guardsmen. Let's start this project by building some halflings. And while I do, let me talk about this week's sponsor,
Squarespace. Have you guys ever had a dream to sometime in the future make some form of living from your hobby or from your art? Well, I most certainly have, and whenever I've had this dream, the best way to showcase that online has been through making my own website. Because just having social media does not really scream that you're serious about what you're doing. By using Squarespace, you can make your own website without any previous knowledge about how to make a website or programming. And it's never been easier than it is right now using Squarespace's new AI tools blueprint that just guides you all the way from the beginning to the end for a finished product that just looks amazing. But if that feels too advanced and you feel like you don't really trust your graphical instincts, you can use one of their amazing looking, award-winning pre-made templates. And pretty much everything is just drag and drop. But maybe you don't make a living already from that side hustle that you have or from that hobby. Don't fret, it is completely free to try to make your own website. So you can work around on that website for 30 days, do whatever you want just to make it look as cool as possible. And you don't have to pay a single dime until you're ready to launch. And when you're ready to launch, you just use the code Squidmar to get 10% off the entire purchase of that website and the domain. Just follow the link down below, squarespace.com/Squidmar, to support us and let Squarespace know that you came from this video. Now let's get back to finishing off these Astra Militarum.
Now that I have all of these minis built, it's finally time to start thinking how to make these feel like Imperial Guardsmen. I myself ended up getting a shock troop box specifically for the occasion, but this is one of those scenarios where it's perfect to ask your friends, go around in the local gaming store and just ask for some bits, because you really don't need much more than some weapons and maybe some other Guardsmen memorabilia. I started off by cutting out a bunch of the weapons and small bits and started holding them to the minis to see what would look the best. And quite fast I found out that this dude holding the classical Blood Bowl bolt could easily be the perfect heavy flamer. The first thing I did was to remove the ball by clipping it off gently. Then by filing and carefully removing materials, I could get the flamer in under the arm so it just looks like he's resting it between his arm and body. Of course, I also added the big gas tanks to the back of the mini, and just look how cute this is starting to look. The gas tanks are so big in comparison to the body. I'm really loving this. To connect the gas tanks to the flamer, I drilled a hole in the connecting bits, bent a piece of aluminum wire and glued it in place. This is a great way because you can easily bend the wire to its desired shape. And you can see here that I cut out some thin plastic card bits and added as a shoulder strap to all of the hanging weapons to not just have them floating around mid-air.
So with the first one down, Lucas had a plan to convert 4 more for his unit in this video, starting off with the Voxcaster. Lucas needed to add some faction-specific bits, but just slapping on a backpack and calling it a day does feel a little bit like a cop-out. We need to do something more. Adding a shovel from the Astra kit to one of his hands adds another detail, but most importantly, he still doesn't feel like a Voxcaster. So, using an old guitar string and bending it in place so that it's touching the model's hand, Lucas has connected the backpack to the model in a way more interesting way. To finish the model off, he's sculpting some square shapes.
And as always, I'll be using one of our 2 favorite putties, Tamiya Quick Epoxy Putty. It's just so nice to work with when you want to create small, fine, crisp details and not having to worry about covering large areas.
On this model, it is to sculpt on the hand that's connected to the guitar string to make it look like he's holding a radio. And with that 3 simple steps, we have yet another completely unique model. But Lucas didn't stop there, he actually finished 3 other models. Another regular warrior with a weapon and a knife. This beauty with the lascan on his shoulder. And finally, this guy with the pistol waving in the air. Posing on these really ended up looking relaxed and natural. One could almost think that these halflings were meant to be in the 41st millennia.
Before we get to paint these minis, I really want to make sure that the base helps set these minis in the 41st millennia and really tell the story. So for the simplicity of this project, I decided to go for these Necromunda pre-made bases from Games Workshop, but more on that later. When it comes to the painting, I'll try to keep things as simple as possible. I opted for a paler skin tone, but still keeping some of those reds and rosy areas in the face, around the knuckles and elbows. And moving on from the skin, of course, you could have gone bananas in the conversion stages of this project, adding Cadia helmets to all your minis, sculpting their insignia on stuff, but in my opinion, what's really gonna sell these as an Astra Militarum unit is to paint them with the Cadia color scheme. And just picking the correct colors for your paint job can truly elevate the feeling and the environment that you want to set them in. So with that said, moving into the beige tones of the piece, I start off with this rather dark sand color. I work my way up with a more yellowy tone. And then finish off with a bluish gray. And we end up with a result something like this. Moving on to the green armor, I of course start off with a really dark olive green. Work my way up to a brighter olive green. And in this step you can make sure to incorporate some scratches, some dots, and some imperfections here and there. Because there's nothing more boring than flat, plain surfaces. And then finishing off with a final small highlight of a really saturated green. Then it's a matter of painting all of the NMM details, and if you guys want more of a deep dive into this, we've made a bunch of videos going into detail how to do this. So do make sure to watch them if you guys want to be as good as I know that you can be.
And as a final step to make the miniatures even more interesting, Lucas is using a red glaze on some of the skin parts like the knuckles, the nose and the elbow to make it look like they've been working hard throughout their entire life and the body parts are worn out.
When the minis were essentially done, it was time to paint the bases and attach them. Here we're stippling the bases with sponges to create this worn out NMM effect. Then moving in with the brush, applying some final highlights, and finishing it off by adding some orange glazes as rust. And now, I think it's time for a grand
Smash the
reveal!
like button.
Smash the like button, you You thought you were gonna see a grand reveal. You don't deserve it yet. What's that? Oh, you subscribed? You liked? That means it's finally time for a grand... Obviously, I didn't finish off all 5 dudes. I'm probably gonna do that for a Kill Team Warband thing in the future, but I think they turned out great anyway. Big thanks to this week's sponsor, Squarespace, and of course, a massive thanks to our amazing, truly amazing patrons. You guys make sure that we can do this for a living full time. So if you guys want to help out, go check out our Patreon. That said,